Today I'm breaking down the mix and production of an instrumental in the style of the greatest band ever created, Nickelback. Realistically, looking at this, we only have 5 tracks. 5 tracks, and then I split the drums into individual tracks, so I guess it's a bit more. Anyway, this is what it sounds like. Let's listen. Obviously heavily modeled after 𝗕𝗘𝗠𝗘. First thing I did was tune the guitar down to drop D. You can turn it down to drop C too. The lower the heavier the better. So just do that. So I recorded my part and then I quantized it. If your playing isn't that good, you can quantize it. Even if your playing is good, you should probably quantize it because it's got to be really, really on grid for it to be like super, super modern, polished rock. After that, you can see I cut out all the empty space. So anything that isn't playing is cut out. Obviously, there's like still reverb and stuff, so it kind of gets masked, which you can even cut like the track out. Could do that. I'm sure it'd work just fine. One thing for sure is that these guitars could have a lot more sharp high end. If you listen to Nickelback, their guitars are super, super sharp and high endy, but somehow they really don't feel like it. If that makes sense. Anyway, I could not get it as sharp and high endy, and you'll see the processing is pretty heavy. So on each guitar track, of which there's 2, or actually there's 3, I have an SSL9000J emulation, just literally not touching anything, just so we can sum it all together, kind of in the SSL network, and just get a nice bit of like saturation across the mix. But really, you don't even need it. I mean, I'm not doing anything in it. Next, we have the Amplitude 5. I'm not even sure what preset I use. I think I just put I just put a Mesa dual rectifier on there with a TS-808 tube screamer, a compressor, and some tape echo, which actually I'm not using. I have a thing down the line that adds tape echo, which is important. We'll get into that. These are the settings for the Mesa. This is the mic settings. We have a Royer and we have a Sennheiser 441 on there and a bit of room in there. Alone, it sounds like this. That's going into an 1176 and it's also going into a digital reverb, which we can maybe even make a little drier. Yeah, that works. As for the second guitar, the exact same thing. I don't think I changed a single thing. No, nothing. Exact same patch. So that's guitar 1, guitar 2. Those 2 guitars sound like this. Kind of a fun riff, actually. Riff-wise, like writing guitar-wise, just play something a little bit less heavy than heavy metal. Maybe I'll describe it like that, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. It's Nickelback. Everyone's heard Nickelback. Just write a Nickelback riff. Next, we have a third guitar. This is a center, a mono guitar. Well, it's not mono, but it's in the center. It's kind of like not super, super audible in the mix. It kind of just adds like a nice oomph in the mids. Again, we have the SSL9000J, not doing anything, just for that saturation. We have a bit of compression going into a Mesa Boogie. These are the settings. I'm not even sure. Yeah, there's some reverb on there. Let's take that off too. I don't want that. And this is a much more roomier tone than everything else. Let's take the room out. So there's that. I'm not even sure. Yeah, we are sending to a send. If you want to check out the sends, just look at these and they line up here. So this is my room send being sent to a room verb, Valhalla room. Very simple. And the Valhalla room is actually being turned up quite a bit because I wanted a lot more room, funnily enough. All right, those are the guitars, though the individual layers anyway. We have individual or group processing as well. This just has some EQ on it, some pretty wild EQ, notably boosting the highs, getting rid of the harsh frequencies. Let's listen to these harsh frequencies. Definitely harsh. Yeah, so you can, I mean, I wouldn't say copy them because your guitars are going to be different, but we're basically just getting rid of some low mids. some mids, almost high mids, and just the harsh grossness like that. And then adding a bunch of high end. I wouldn't be too scared of cutting, or I wouldn't be too scared of these frequencies in general. I wouldn't be too scared of like all these harsh things. Honestly, I could even just turn these up and they'd be fine. Because if you listen to like isolated Nickelback guitars, there is actually a lot of like harshness in them. Just for some reason you don't hear it because they're gods of music. So this is a guitar group 1. Let's just name it that. Next we have the kind of guitar sub that all the guitars are in. This has a ton more processing on it. We are going into an SSL comp, just some standard compression. Standard. Then we have an EQ. This EQ is kind of wild too. If I turn that off, a lot more low mid heavy. So cut out the low mids, kind of roll off the lows, and then do a high end boost, getting rid of those nasty frequencies here too. That needed to go. Next I have Renaissance X. Renaissance X is cool because it's super fast compression. It's very nice compression. It's very harmonically sweet compression. So if I take that off, just tames. Maybe I wouldn't even go too fast on it. Yeah, maybe a little less than I originally thought. Then we're going into a Pro Q with some mid-side processing. Lovely. This is ducking the mids at 445, boosting it, boosting the stereo, boosting the entire thing at 2.6, and then really boosting the sides at 7K. Let's take that off and see what happens. That's needed. That sounds more Nickelback with it on. Next we have a Pro MB, even more high end, slight kind of taming or like controlling around the 3.6 area, and some taming around the 3 area, and then just some high end boost because you need it. Now this is important. If I take this off, sounds fake and weird. You know what I mean? This is just a tape delay, or actually it's a slap delay, in a Roland Space Echo, I believe. Yep. Style. Let's listen to it. So when you have that little slap, and by the way, the delay is set to 44 milliseconds, so very fast slap delay. You get just a lot more fullness and almost like a vintage feel in a modern way, I guess, if I can describe it like that. So it also is turned down quite a bit. Let's turn it up a little bit. Just a bit more depth. Hopping into Saturn, a little high-end boost here as well. You can copy the settings if you want. It's on schedule saturation. The dynamics level is right here. The drive is 42%. Again, you don't need to identically copy my parameters, but do your own thing with my assisting, I guess. Let's turn the Saturn off. Crazy high-end boost. That's not even all the saturation. We're not done yet. I guess we're done with the guitars. Moving on to the bass. Bass is a fake bass. Bass is a Scarby bass from Contact. Scarby pre-bass. And there it is. That's what it looks like. Then it goes into the SSL 9000, just like everything else. And we have Amplitude 5 for the bass tone. This is the bass tone. It's the SVX Pro. It's got a bit of tube overdrive on there and some compression. Bit of EQ as well. Also going to a tube compressor here. If you want to look at the mic settings, all that stuff, and the room setting, this is what it looks like. Let's turn it off. And on. Pretty crazy. Next up, and very important, is bass lane, because you need width. You need a lot of width in that bass. Without it, kind of boring. With it, right. This is what it's doing. Into Pro Q, we have this kind of wild EQ. We're just kind of lowering the low mids, cutting off the total lows. We don't really need anything for 25 hertz. Boosting here, and cutting here. We need some hi-hat in the bass. You got to hear the bass. It's got that nice kind of rattly sound that I really like. Now, this is maybe one of the most important plugins on this bass is Real Life. And I wish I could tell you what it did or what it does. I don't even know. But listen to it with it off. Gross. With it. So, shout out to Analog Obsession. It's free. It's a great plugin. Then we have Decapitator for some distortion. Let's turn it off and see what it sounds like. And on. Just a bit of warmth, just a bit of taste. Next up, we have Soothe on the bass. It's sidechaining the low end to the kick. Whenever the kick hits, the low end kind of ducks in the bass. Very simple. This is the curve. This is the curve. And yeah. So if we take our bass rack off, gross. There we go. Next up, the drums. This is maybe the most in-depth kind of instrument. Obviously, I mean, it's drums, so that makes sense. On the drum bus, just before we go into anything, we have a DBX 160 emulation, just a compressor. It's just, bus compression. So just keep that in mind. And then we have the actual drum instrument. I don't know why I stuttered on that. Drum instrument, Superior Drummer 3. It is a gospel EZX. Kind of a funny EZX to choose for a metal song, hard rock song. Someone's going to tell me it's not metal. I don't care. It's just extremely polished. This is one of the best drum kit EZXs on Superior Drummer. I don't know what it is, but it sounds so good. Excuse the latency. There's a lot of plugins on my master. So yeah, I don't think I changed anything. I guess I technically did because there's a star next to this default thing. This is what the mixer looks like. It is pretty simple. I did add this to the kick, this classic compressor, and this EQ. Needed it to jump out a little more. Boosted the high end a little bit, the high mids, just so you could hear that clickiness. You need that clickiness in a heavy rock song. So that's the kick. Next, that's kind of it as far as inside Superior Drummer. I just have all the layers routed to these individual things. So let's jump into the kick. Nice and heavy. SSL 9000, of course. We're kind of treating it like it's like a real mixer, but not really, because it's Ableton. It's not a SSL. But it's going through SSL channels, and each channel is individual, so each channel has its own little saturation, own little circuit that's kind of changing the sound a little bit. First thing we got, transient shaper. Need a lot more attack on the kick. Without it. With it. There you go. It's not doing too much. Next, we have the UAD empirical lamp distressor. This is the setting. It's on distortion 2. It's on ratio 2. And what else? These are the settings. Yeah, that's it. Without it. With it. Just a lot more control. R bass. This is important too. Let's take R bass off. Ooh, it just kind of sounds like you're punching cardboard. Put R bass on. Sounds like you're hitting a nice deep kick drum. This is what R bass looks like. Those are the settings. Yeah. R bass is a harmonic enhancer. I forget what they call it. It's like some sort of low-end harmonic enhancer. Just makes low-end boomy and punchy. So yeah. Then we got a Pro Q. Again, we're boosting. Actually, doing pretty much the exact same curve as you saw before in Superior Drummer. Boosting, cutting a bit in the low mids around 250. I seem to be cutting a lot in 250, but that is kind of like the biggest masking frequency. So that would make sense. Last but not least, the Oxford Inflator. This is like a meme plugin. It just inflates. It's a great plugin, especially for mixes like this where like everything is so not dynamic, but like kind of is dynamic, but it's like really squashed. So everything's just in your face. So that's pretty cool. Here is the snare. Obviously got some leakage from the kick. So 9000. Then we go to Saturn. Doing a bit of high-end saturation, low-end saturation too, actually, apparently. And just a tiny, tiny boost around here, 1 dB. Let's turn it off and see what happens. It's like an exciter, kind of just excites those frequencies. Next we have the L1176, classic kind of compressor for this. Fast attack, fast release. Just add some to it. You'll hear it. Add some sustain. Then we have a parallel group. So we have the dry chain here with nothing on it. We have a plate reverb, which sounds like this. It is just the Arturia reverberation unit, Rev Plate 140. Pretty quick, pretty wide, and this model, whatever this is, I actually don't really know too much about this plugin or the thing it's modeling itself after. Next, we have the Better Maker. I believe this is the same thing. Yeah, a DBX thing for the snare. So if we turn this off, put it on. That's a nice space. That snare definitely needed that plate in there. It kind of sounded dry without it. And then lastly, to top it off, just some EQ. So, without the processing, and with it, pretty well. On the hi-hat, we have a 9000J. On the overheads, we have a 9000J. We have a bit of saturation. Without it, and with it, brings it up, excites it a little more. Then we got a bit of Pro Q. I wonder why this is even on. What was happening? I just like that kind of grossness. I'd bring it up a little more. But there's a lot of low end in the kick, so that's probably why I did that. Lastly, for the room, 9000J and reamp saturation. Preamp tube drive saturation, apparently. And that sounds like this. Pretty crazy. That's probably why I had that EQ earlier, because this is pretty boomy too. Off. On. That's cool. A little more high end with those harmonics set to all. Cool, and those drums sound like this. So gnarly. Whew, you gotta love it. These are my sends, by the way, just to check it out. Valhalla Room, these settings, Valhalla Plate, those settings, Valhalla Vintage Verb, those settings, and Valhalla Delay, those settings. Right, I probably should have been naming it as the send. Sorry, my slap delay, that, my tape delay, that, my throw delay, I believe, is that. There we go, those are my sends. Lastly, we have a little mastering chain, just a TRX 5 classic clipper. I wouldn't really call it a mastering chain, but it's needed. A lot of clipping involved. All right, let's listen back. That bass is so good. Nickelback always just has basses in their verse, just bass drums. Let's take all these processors off, all these plugins off, and just see how different it sounds. I mean, it's not horrible. It just kind of sounds like it's unmixed Nickelback. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Bye.